Hello everybody, I'm Raphael Perry, and tonight I'm going to do a little theory crafting video on Bloodsword. I've been hankering to try my hand at Bloodsword again for the last 3 or 4 months now, I think. And I probably should get back into it. Lone Wolf is slightly delayed. If you go back and check my old Bloodsword playthrough, you'll know that my group of heroes got killed by the 4 Mercanian Barbarians. We lost all our weapons, the barbarians came and beat us up, we tried to survive, and the dice just didn't like us. That's okay. Now, it turns out the barbarians are a bit of a fan favourite. And that Bloodsword fans have a bit of a love-hate relationship with the barbarians. Apparently there's some very interesting discussions online about how people intend to work their way through the encounters. And there's a reason why I said encounters instead of encounter. Because the barbarians are not just one combat encounter, they are 7 combat encounters. Don't get me wrong, you only have to fight them once. Twice if you're really unlucky. Allow me to demonstrate. I've knocked up a nice little diagram here. And I want to do a bit of theory crafting on how to handle the barbarians. So here we go. Approaching the barbarians, there's 2 ways you can encounter them. You can be working for either Magus Balazar or Magus Callaghan. If you're not sure why you won't be working for Magus Vile, that's okay. That's a secret to find out. But there is a reason why you probably won't be working for him when you enter the dungeon. Now, if you're working for Magus Callaghan, you will come across the lake. You will not have the chance to go to Nebularon. More details later. And you may acquire Imragan, an additional 5th party member. Now, Imragan costs a very, very hefty price. It is possible for heroes working for Magus Callaghan, but not working for Magus Balazar, to acquire the Green Scarab Amulet, which can be used once by each member of the party. This will restore them to life when they die, but never work for them again, so all 4 heroes could get 1 use out of it. If the amulet is placed upon the dead body of someone who wasn't wearing it when they died, they will be restored to life, but the amulet will never work for anyone else ever again. And it is possible to find the dead body of Imragan and place the amulet upon him, meaning it could never be used for any of the other heroes. Right? So no second chance at life for any of them, in order to acquire an additional companion who, in all fairness, he's a 2nd rank warrior, and if you're going with the full 4 character party, he'd be as powerful as your warrior, if your warrior's still alive. He'd make a nice replacement warrior, but if you ever flee from battle, Imragan stays behind to hold off the enemies and dies, even if he's a replacement character. There's nothing that says he leaves at the end of book 1. He can stick around and continue on into other books, interestingly. But then I'm not sure if he would be gaining a share of the experience, because he does join the party as a full character, so he would gain a share of experience and slow down the party progression, meaning that the later books could become progressively more difficult. Of course, the amount of characters you have in your party is essentially a difficulty setting in and of itself, because you split the levels between them. If you have a single hero, you're very high powered, but the encounters over the course of the adventure will wear you down. If you have 2 heroes, you get half the levels each. 3 heroes, you split it roughly 3 ways. 4 heroes, you get a quarter of the levels each. But you have a full party with all the spells and skills and abilities available to you. So, the lake. If you work for Magus Callaghan, you will come across the lake from another part of the dungeon. If you work for Magus Balthazar, you will reach an area where there is a powerful demon named Nebularon. You may be able to avoid Nebularon. I'll just zoom in here. Avoiding Nebularon. If you defeat Nebularon, you will arrive at the lake on the same side that Callaghan's heroes would come to. You can't get to the side they would come from, and you would eventually face the barbarians as they would come rushing down the corridor to fight you. If you wanted to run away from the fight, you would run, and it's possible the barbarians could trap you in a dead end. That's a second barbarian fight with the same barbarians. They would keep any existing wounds, and then you'd essentially progress on to an area that is a mirror of this one. You would reach a room with a ceiling, with a grate on the floor that's been knocked down from a ceiling that someone used to climb down from, and then you'd come to a junction with two doors. This room would not hold the assassins, but would hold archers who would come down from the grate and infiltrated that chamber. This chamber would be inaccessible, and then you'd come to the gambler. If, however, you avoided Nebularon and found the secret passage, you would sneak through a secret tunnel and find a grate in the ceiling of this chamber here. Now, if it's not the same area, it's the same layout. In the room below are the barbarians. Now, you can kick down the grate, jump down and attack them, and fight them here. It's an ambush. You get an extra round. They essentially don't act in the first round. If you wait above the grate, the barbarians head off down this corridor, come to the T-junction, have a bit of a heated discussion, and eventually split off, two going this way, two going this way. And you can drop down and follow them, or stay up here and wait. If you follow them, you come to the T-junction. You can go this way to the room with the scrolls and the skull. The barbarians are about to... they're interacting with the skull, which means that you don't get to use the scrolls. You can fight the barbarians, and you can also run away and run down to the gambler. You can also ignore this door completely and walk straight to the gambler's room. That's literally the only way you can avoid fighting the barbarians. But you might want to fight them, for reasons I'll go into in a bit, of course, because the scrolls are incredibly valuable and precious. If you follow the barbarians and come down this way, you'll come to the room with the assassins. There are 3 assassins in this room, and 2 barbarians. The 3 assassins will be dead. If you fought the barbarians here, jump down, attack them, kill them here, and then come down here, the assassins will be very much alive. If you jumped down and fought the barbarians here, and ran away, because the barbarians were beating you up, and the barbarians chase you, because the way the barbarians see it, right, they're big, they're rough, they're violent, they're looking for a fight. And if you're going to take the fight away from them, then they're going to jolly well bring the fight back to you. So, fleeing the barbarians, you could head up this way to the gambler, or this way to the assassin's room, where the 3 assassins would be alive and attack you, and then the barbarians would come barreling in behind you, and there'd be a great big free-for-all. Barbarians and assassins fighting each other as well as you. The barbarians will just hit whoever's closest. The assassins, if there's someone next to them, they'll attack whoever's next to them. If there's nobody next to them, they'll throw a ninja star. They don't care who, just, dice roll like a 50-50. Basically, is it a hero, is it a barbarian they're going to attack? They don't care, they're trying to kill both of you, right? And then, of course, all roads lead to the gambler. After all roads lead to the barbarians. Now, the sneakiest thing is to wait for the barbarians to come back. So if you follow the barbarians to the room with the scrolls, you don't get to use the scrolls. If you kill them here, then go to the room with the scrolls, then you get to use the scrolls. And there's an interesting little loophole here, right? Because if you keep waiting in the grate after the barbarians go off and you don't jump down and follow them, Eventually the barbarians come back, and they're bragging about how easy it was to kill the assassins, and teasing each other for getting hurt by those funny little pieces of metal the assassins were throwing at us. And then you jump down and ambush them, and the barbarians are wounded. It's worth noting that if you come down here and fight 2 barbarians after they've killed the 3 assassins, those 2 barbarians are wounded as well. It's the same 2 barbarians. And yes, all 4 of the barbarians have names, but you're never going to encounter all 4 names in one playthrough. You'll get 2 or 3 of their names if you're lucky. Their names are Eric, Snorri, Torsvald, and Lars. You will hear Eric, Snorri, and Torsvald's names reasonably frequently. Lars' name, you only hear it, I think, if they come running to fight you by the lake. And Snorri's name is relatively rare. I think you have to wait for them to come back again after exploring these ruins. Anyway, if you wait for them to come back and then jump down and ambush them, and then come back to the scroll room, I think you're allowed to use the scroll room because you defeated them here. Because even though it's a separate ambush fight section, I think it's the same victory section. No, it's not the same victory section because the assassins... So, I think if you kill the barbarians here and go to the scroll room, you can use the scrolls. If you follow the barbarians to the scroll room, they ruin the scrolls and you can't use the scrolls. If you wait for them to come back, they didn't ruin the scrolls because you didn't interrupt them and they didn't spoil them. And you then get to go there and use the scrolls. I'll need to check on that at some point later. And then after that you go see the gambler, obviously. So, that's a little summary. So, 2 fights here, fight and run away. Fight here, and... Wait, no. 2 fights here, fight and run away, get caught up. Fight here, and run away, and potentially get caught here. That's 4 fights. 5 fight, fighting in the scroll room. 6 fight with the assassins. I'm not sure what the other one is. I think there's another runaway option. I'd have to go look at them again, but I do know there's 7. I noted down every single section. The barbarians can be fought in. Now, let's get back to this. So, fighting the barbarians. If you fight them in a room, you get plenty of space around you. If you fight them in a corridor or tunnel, it's literally a 2 square wide space. And you'll have essentially 4 barbarians and 4 heroes in a very tightly packed space, and it's going to hurt a hell of a lot. If you fight them in the scroll room or the assassin room, you get more space to move around. If you fight them in the room with the grill, in the ceiling, the grating in the ceiling, either by jumping down and attacking them immediately or waiting for them to return wounded and jumping down and attacking them, this is the map you'll be looking at. And your flee edge is up here. Now, this is still a very tough fight. For the purposes of this, I'm going to presume that the heroes are all on full health, haven't lost any endurance points, they haven't lost their weapons, so they got their full complement of gear. I'm not going to factor in any other items. Alright. And I'm just going to assess the odds. And it's not as bad as it seems. I'm also going to presume that the enchanter or enchantress has a single volcano spray or white fire spell prepared. Also obviously assuming a party of 4, which means these are rank 2 heroes, and the barbarians are slightly more powerful than rank 2. They're about rank 3. Now, looking at our barbarians, you'll notice some of them are injured. with a current endurance below their natural amount. So they start with 11, but one of them will be on 8, one will be on 10 because they've been wounded by the assassins. I've also assumed the default party marching order with position 1, 2, 3, 4 shown on the deployment map for this encounter. It is entirely possible that I would have swapped the warrior into position 1 and the trickster into position 2 in the party marching order. That would have been very bad for this encounter. So I'm assuming standard marching order, everyone's on full health with their normal equipment, one spell prepared for the enchantress. As it is one of the ambush sections, the heroes get to go before the barbarians. And the barbarians will not act in the first turn. As we know, initiative takes place in order of awareness. And I'll also be using the optional rule where heroes and monsters can move anywhere on the map they need to. Instead of default movement rules, heroes must move up to a monster or up to the exit to retreat from combat. So literally, our trickster here could only move in one of these spaces. Well, it could move to here. She could move to here or here. Or she could move to here, here, or here. Or somewhere up on this edge ready to run away. With the optional rule, she could just step out of line so no one can attack her and still be close enough to be considered a proximity target. So essentially, she could move to, say, let's say we kill these two barbarians. She could move up to here. Our warrior could move back down. She would be the closest, well, her and the enchantress, for this barbarian. It allows a little more flexibility. Next up, something else to remember. So this is all remembering rules and seeing how they can help us in this fight. First off, let's remember that the trickster, I knew it was going to happen eventually, has dodging technique. You are very adept at evading attacks. When an opponent makes a fight roll against you, he or she must roll 2 dice plus 1 instead of the usual 2 dice. And that would turn into 3 dice plus 1 instead of the usual 3 dice when taking the defend action. The trickster is very hard to hit. Quick thinking. I may have completely forgotten to use this in my attempt against the barbarians last time, or it might have just made no difference. And this actually sways the balance of this encounter significantly. Once in each combat, you can use this ability to take 2 actions in the same round. The first action happens at the point in the round when you would normally get to act, that is, as governed by your awareness. The second action comes at the end of the round when everyone else has had a chance to do something. So, the trickster will go first at the top of the round. The barbarians will skip their turns in the first round. The other heroes will simultaneously take their turns in a... I forgot to give her an initiative number. Awareness is 6. There we go. So the other 3 heroes take their actions in an order of their choosing, simultaneously essentially. Then the trickster could go again. Then she'd go a third time at the start of the next round. Then the remaining barbarians would clobber the living daylights out of whoever's left. On to the barbarians. They do 1d6 plus 2 damage. That is 3 to 8 damage. Or, essentially ignoring the armor value of 2 on the trickster, the enchantress, and the sage, and doing 1 point less, so a d6 minus 1 against the warrior. This means that the warrior could take 2 full damage blows from the barbarians and have 2 endurance points left. Everyone else in the party would drop to 2 full damage hits from the barbarians. There are a number of important factors to this encounter. First off, keeping the Sage alive so he can use his healing power on the other heroes afterwards. To use his healing power, he needs to have a high amount of endurance points remaining himself, so he can't get too badly hurt. As you can see, he is one of the only 2 heroes who's adjacent to 2 barbarians, the other one being the warrior who's next to 2. So taking out these 2 barbarians first is very important. This one threatens the Enchantress, and the Enchantress can't really afford to spend actions defending very much. She wants to be spending all of her actions preparing to cast spells and attempting to cast spells. So that means if we use the optional rule for movement with a 4 square limit, the Trickster can only get to here. She can't, if we're not using that rule, she can go all the way around here, right? And then this barbarian has 3 people around him and gets to choose who to attack. It's important to remember that when the barbarians are standing next to more than one hero, they do randomize their target. Technically, each hero is supposed to roll a die or roll 2 dice, and then whoever rolls highest becomes the target. But because it's an equal chance of everyone, I'll just like roll a d2 or a d3 or a d4 to see who the barbarians go for. So, in terms of prioritizing who the Trickster should attack first, it's probably one of these 2 barbarians. Now, we can go to relieve the pressure on the Enchantress, and if we hit, do 1d6 damage minus 1 armor, so up to 5 damage. It's also important to note that the map does not say which of the 4 barbarians are the 2 wounded ones. I could have placed the wounded ones on any of these 4 squares I wanted. I just went with it this way round because that's the way I did it last time, ages ago, I think. Well, last time I was in a 2 square wide hallway of death with no weapons. So, if we go down here and attack this barbarian, we can do up to 5 damage if we hit. Could miss. Then the Enchantress will have a chance to blast this barbarian with white fire, which would be a significant amount of damage if it works. If she's prepared Volcano Spray, it could do a little bit of damage to every barbarian and wear them all down simultaneously. Now, there's advantages to both. The white fire spell would do enough damage to a barbarian that 1 or 2 hits from other adventurers would drop that barbarian and reduce the amount of attacks on the party. This doesn't change the fact that 2 barbarians could absolutely kill the Sage in 1 turn, however. We could go to here and attack this barbarian. Then the barbarians would skip their turn. Then the Enchantress could attempt to cast a spell and, if successful, deal damage to this barbarian. The Sage could attack this barbarian, right? At which point, if that spell was... Oh, and then the Trickster could attack this barbarian again. So even if the spell doesn't work, we get 3 attacks on this barbarian. Or this one, if we're ignoring the optional movement limit and just going right round here to pile into that one, in which case we get 1, 2, 3, 4 attacks on this barbarian and potentially a spell. That would be a very good move. But let's say I'm using that optional rule, so I can't go all the way around here. So I'll come here, try to kill off this barbarian as quickly as possible. So, using the quick thinking, the Trickster will get 3 attacks before any of the barbarians gets a turn. So, that's 4 attacks or 5 attacks if we come round over here. At which point, we have relieved the pressure on the Sage and increased his chance of surviving. Now, it is entirely possible that during this surprise round, some of our heroes could use the defend action. The Sage could very well use the defend action. However, The Sage has enough endurance points at full health that if he's hit by one of the barbarians for 8 health, he's taking 6 endurance, has 4 points left, at which point he cannot afford to be struck again. So, he can afford to take 1 hit in the first round after the surprise round, meaning he can attempt to lay down damage. The Sage also has his stunning attack, which is difficult as it requires 3 dice to attack instead of 2. And yes, I'm aware that... Oh, I've got a comma there from when he lost his weapon. I'll just remove that. Yeah. I think I'd like to just run through it and see how it goes. Okay. I ran a few tests on this earlier, and I completely forgot about the Trickster's favoured action. Now, yes, movement. If you move away from an enemy, they will hit you. It's a free hit, it's automatic, they roll for damage. Unless your awareness is higher than theirs. The barbarians have an awareness of 7, which is... It's not much of a challenge to smaller parties. If you've just got 1 or 2 heroes, you've probably got higher awareness than them and going before them, and they're just a bit slow and blundering and they don't hit you as you retreat. If you've got 3 or 4, they're probably faster than most of you. But the Trickster can just dance around, ignoring all of the attacks of opportunity, and go wherever she likes, and go and stand next to any barbarian that she likes. Remember that barbarians will randomize their targets, and they get a penalty to hit the Trickster because the Trickster is harder to hit, which actually means that with their fighting prowess of 8, they'd need to roll a 7 or less on 2 dice, which is, reasonably average, or a 7 or less on 3 dice if the Trickster is defending to hit the Trickster, which means the Trickster, being harder to hit than anyone else, can almost attack with impunity in this encounter. And now that I've done that, I need to get to the spell section for the Enchanter. There we go. And I'll run through this. I'll do a test run, see how it goes. For now, I'm only going to use Volcano Spray and White Fire for this encounter. So, Kena goes first. She's going to try and remove some pressure on Melchior by attacking Lars the Barbarian. She has a fighting prowess of 7, so she comes in and attacks, and oh dear, misses. Hey, you know what? Sometimes that happens. The barbarians skip their turns because they're surprised. Berengar the warrior will attack the barbarian who's adjacent to the sage. He lands a successful hit. The warrior's damage is d6 plus 1, which will essentially ignore some barbarian armor. And Torsvald here will go down to 9 endurance rather than 11, and shout that Torsvald is alive! You know it's going to happen. Melchior, seeing that Torsvald is the one taking damage and Lars is not, sees Lars is still a weaker target and that Kena could get an extra attack. So Melchior's going to lay into Lars with his quarterstaff. Bonk. Fighting prowess of 7. 7 or less means that's a hit. So we're going to go for a d6 damage. The barbarians do have a small amount of armor, so that's 4 damage minus 1 armor is 3. I am speeding through this a bit, okay, as this is just a test. And Lars is now down to 5 endurance. Now, Saraya is going to attempt to cast Volcano Spray at Lars. She has a psychic ability of 8. She has 1 spell prepared, which reduces it to a 7. And Volcano Spray is a complexity level 1 spell. So we take a +1 penalty on the dice. So, 2d6 plus 1. We essentially need to roll a 6 or less. That did not succeed. She's failed to cast the spell. If she attempts to cast a spell again on her next turn, it will be 1 point easier, so it'll be a straight 2d6. So instead of 6, she'll need 7, then 8, then 9, and 10, until she literally double 6 or less will do it, so can't fail. That's unfortunate. And then, just before we get to the next round, Kaena says, hey, I'm going to have my extra attack now from quick thinking. And she decides to have a stab at Lars again. That's very fortunate. Trickster does 1d6 damage. 4 points. 3 after armor takes him down to 2 endurance. Then, start of the round. The barbarians are no longer surprised, and Lars now only has 2 endurance points. If Kaena can kill him, this guarantees Melchior's survival. If she doesn't kill him, she's still here as an alternate target, and it improves his survival significantly. So, we will attack and miss. Now the barbarians go. They have equal awareness and can go in any order they want. I've just got them in this order because they can. So, Torsvald has 2 targets. Diagonal does not count. 1 for Berengar, 2 for Melchior. A 1 for Berengar. 7 is going to be a hit. 6 points of damage. Berengar takes 3 on his chainmail armor. 3 damage takes him down to 9 current endurance. He can still take a hit from Snorri and remain standing. Snorri will attack next. Funnily enough. That's a hit. That is also 6 damage. 3 more damage. That takes Berengar down to 6 endurance points. He is now looking rather vulnerable and will probably need to be defending for most of the rest of the encounter. Lars has 2 targets, 1 for Melchior, 2 for Kaena. 2 for Kaena. Okay, excellent. That's a... Right, that's technically wrong. It should be 2d6 plus 1 to hit Kaena, but a plus 1 modifier is only going to make that a 7. An 8 or less is going to be a hit for him, so it's going straight to damage. I could technically reroll it. And that could have made it a miss. But I'm going to keep the result of the first roll, because otherwise I'm just, rolling again to try and get a different result. So, 4 points of damage to Kaena. She takes 2 on the studded leather armor, takes her down to 10 endurance. Something I forgot to mention is the Trickster has the same amount of endurance points as the Warrior. She has less armor, but it's 1 point harder to hit, meaning she can go and stand next to any enemy she wants to protect another hero by essentially providing an alternate target the enemy might randomize onto. Erek will attack Seraya. And misses completely. Berengar will look at the 2 barbarians next to him. They're looking pretty healthy. He's not looking healthy. If one of them hits him for maximum damage, he will have 1 endurance point remaining, and then the other one could hit him. He will take the defense action, meaning the barbarians will need to roll 3 dice to hit him instead of 2. Melchior is on full health and decides that it's best to try and get rid of Lars while he still can. That is a hit. Excellent. The barbarian... I just need 3, okay? 3! Oh! How lucky. So, Melchior rolls a 3 for damage. Lars has 1 point of armor. 2 points of damage get through. He has 2 remaining endurance. Lars is out of the fight. And then Seraya will attempt to cast her spell. Now, Soraya's on full health, meaning she can take a hit from Erek. So she will attempt to cast her white fire on Torsvald. Remember now she needs a 7 or less instead of a 6. She gets a 7. White fire deals 2d6 plus 2. Armor does apply. And this is where the big blasting power of the Enchantress comes into play in this encounter. So we have a 9. 1 point of the armor is 8. Torsvald goes down to 1 remaining endurance. But Torsvald's alive! New round. Kaena wants to go running in and fighting. But she's all the way back here, and I'm using the 4 square optional move rule. Meaning, she can't go further than here. But the Trickster and the Sage each have a bow. She's no longer adjacent to her ex, so she's just going to shoot Torsvald and try and kill him off. Now, this is a very risky shot in this tight space, and that's a success, though. That's brilliant. Arrows only ever do 1d6 damage. They don't do full weapon damage. I rolled more than a 1. I rolled a 2. 1 point on the armor. Torsvald loses his last point of endurance and mutters, "Oh, well, who wants to live forever anyway?" and slumps to the floor. At this point, Snorri will absolutely lay into Berengar with everything he's got, pretty much. That's completely incorrect, because Berengar is defending. 9. I could have rolled 1d6 and added it to that 5, but you know what? Just for shits and giggles. Yeah, so that would have been a hit. So 9 is higher than 8. No hit. Berengar survives. Erek only has 1 target as well, who is not defending. Also, Soraya cast Volcano Spray, so her psychic ability should go back up to 8, and Volcano Spray is gone. I don't want to try cast a spell she doesn't have prepared. That would be cheating. Berengar will... Snorri's pretty healthy. Berengar will continue defending. Melchior will move up to here to provide an alternate target and attempt to stun Snorri. A 12, alas, is higher than a 7. He doesn't land a stunning hit, which would have done extra damage and made Snorri act at the end of the next round, not the current round. So he'd lose his turn, and he'd be going last next round as well. Soraya will... She could move away from Erek, but he'd get a free hit, which could potentially cost her half her endurance points. So instead, let's prepare Volcano Spray. Did I have Volcano Spray written there instead of White Fire? My apologies. And that will lower her psychic ability by 1, because it's lowered by 1 for every prepared spell. Preparing a spell is her whole round action. That's all she gets to do. New round. Now we can move Kaena up here and attack Snorri. Kaena's on full health, so she can... No, she's not. She's on 10 out of 12. She can attack with impunity, however, so let's do that. That's unfortunately a miss. Snorri now has 3 targets to choose from. We'll go 1 Kaena, 2 Melchior, 3 Berengar. 2. He attacks Melchior, who is not defending. That's a hit. This is going to hurt us. He only scores 3 damage. Melchior has 2 armor for his ringmail, and so takes 1 damage, taking him down to 9 current endurance. That gives him plenty of endurance points left for healing. Erek will attack Soraya. That's a miraculous miss. She would have been pretty creamed if he'd walloped her hard. I mean, let's say he did hit. 7. 2 points on the silver armor, 5 points. She'd be down to a 5 of her remaining 10 endurance and would have to just start defending. At this point, Berengar will attack, because all 3 of these heroes will attack before Snorri gets a turn, and Berengar wants to be dealing some damage here. 6 is a hit, and as a warrior he's doing 1d6 plus 1 damage. Which essentially means he can ignore the armor of Snorri and do 1 whole point. Oh well. Melchior will attack as well, because Melchior has enough health that a full power blow would leave him with 3 endurance remaining. That is unfortunately a miss. The dice are turning against me, it would seem, and Soraya will attempt to cast Volcano Spray on both the barbarians because it just hits all the enemies in the area. So essentially, that has failed by 1. I've rolled my 2 dice, I've added the 1 point for the spell complexity. I needed a 7 or less, I got an 8. Next turn, it'll be easier. Kaina will attack and miss, which means Snorri is dangerous. 1 for Kaina, 2 for Melchior, 3 for Berengar. Now we're living dangerously. 3, he goes for Berengar. This could hurt an awful lot. It cannot kill, however, so he has chosen a target who can afford to take the blow. That's a solid hit. 4 points, 3 points on the armor. Berengar goes down to 5 endurance, which means that now he could be killed if Snorri rolls a 6 for damage. So Berengar wants to start defending now. Erek will attack Soraya because she's there. That's a hit. That is 5 damage, takes 2 on the armor, 3 points, takes her down to 7 endurance, which means she can take another hit and be on 1 endurance or more. Berengar absolutely defends. Melchior, pretty healthy, will attack. At this point, we're praying for Soraya to complete her spells. That's a hit with the quarterstaff. Let's do some damage. 1 point, bonks on the armor. Snorri is fine. Soraya desperately attempts to channel the Volcano Spray. That's a success. She'll do 1d6 to each barbarian. Armor applies. So, Snorri. 5 points, 1 on the armor goes to 4. That takes him down to 5 endurance, much easier for the other 2 to kill. And then for Erek, 4 points, 1 on the armor makes it 3, takes him down to 8 endurance. It's possible Kaina's going to have to come stand down here soon. New round. We need this kill. She'd need to roll a 6 of damage to hit him. And she is flexible and mobile. Let's move down here and attack Erek instead. Oh, also, I successfully cast a spell. I should remove that spell. There we go. So things aren't looking too badly at this point. All right. He says, 6 is a hit. 1d6 damage. Oh, 5 after armor. Takes him down to 3 points, at which Soraya might almost consider trying to hit him with her sword, but she's not that desperate. Right, Snorri. 1 for Melchior, 2 for Berengar. Berengar is defending, so 3 dice instead of 2. That's a 16, it's much higher than an 8, no damage goes through. Erek also needs to randomize. We'll go 1 for Soraya, 2 for Kaina. 1 for Soraya it is. That's unfortunate. But a 10 is higher than an 8. She's living a charmed life. Berengar continues to defend. Melchior will attack. And at this point, it's just a matter of having Soraya continue to cast spells to wipe out the barbarians. 3 endurance, 5 endurance, while the others continue to defend. And that's pretty much where we stand here. So we'll have an attack with Melchior. 7 is a hit. D6 damage is 3. 1 on the armor goes down to 2 for Snorri, taking him to 3 current endurance points. Melchior may need to start defending. If Melchior gets hit one more time, he will need to defend for the rest of the encounter. Soraya will prepare. I'm going to go Volcano Spray again. It's unlikely to get a kill, but it will severely weaken them. White Fire would kill a Barbarian if I can cast it, but Erek is so badly... They're both so badly damaged, a single decent Volcano Spray could do it. Let's have an attack from Kana, because she's got too much health to be killed in one blow. And that's the only reason she's attacking now. 11 misses completely. Snorri will randomize, as before. 2 is Erek, 3d6 to attack. That is fortunately a miss. With 3 dice, you're likely to be getting in the sort of 10 to 12 range. Erek will randomize. 1 for Enchantress, 2 for Trickster. There we go. And she's not defending, but she is the Trickster, so 2d6 plus 1. 9. Just over the 8. Being the Trickster made that attack miss with her cunning, dodgy ways. Berengar decides to actually attack Snorri, because Berengar can attack, Melchior can attack. Even if Soraya fails her spell, Kana can rush up here and attack, and then it's looking pretty good. So yes, Berengar will attack. 7 is an 8 or less, it's a hit. So, 7 damage, 1 on the armour, 6 points. Snorri bites the dust. At which point Melchior rushes down here to attack Erek. And let's hope he gets a hit. He does! Excellent! 2 points of damage, 1 point on the armour. Erek has 2 endurance points remaining. Soraya will attempt to cast her spell. +1, because it's the first time casting this instance. That's a success. Volcano Spray goes off, and as long as she rolls a 3 or higher, which she does, oh, on the money, she slays the Barbarian as the fire sprays all over him. The fight is at an end, and in the next section after the encounter, Melchior can perform healing, bearing in mind the Sage can only attempt healing once per section. This is a mistake I made in my previous playthrough, where I had the Sage attempting to heal multiple times in a section on my YouTube playthrough from quite a few years ago. So he's rank 2. I'm going to sacrifice 2 endurance points and roll d6 minus 2. A 3, so I get 2 endurance points back. I'll give 1 to Melchior. He sacrificed 2, so he's gone down to an 8. And then I can give 1 point to somebody else. Obviously Berengar. And then as they continue on their way through the dungeon, Melchior can continue healing. Bear in mind that if he rolls a 1 or 2 for healing, no endurance points come back. And they're just wasted. But there we are. We made it through the Barbarian encounter in reasonably good shape. I'm quite happy with how that worked out. The party do have a number of abilities at their disposal to deal with the Barbarians, but the Barbarians are a tough fight. They are one of the, I'd say one of the top 3 fights in the entire dungeon. But alright. That was fun. I might start a Bloodsword playthrough on the channel soon. I know I'm hoping to start a Lone Wolf channel, a Lone Wolf channel. That'd be impressive. No, that probably exists already. No, I'm hoping to start a Lone Wolf playthrough on the channel soon. I've recorded the first episode. I want to spend a bit more time getting a decent thumbnail sorted out for the series, so the videos will look nice and pretty and people will click on them. And in the meantime, I might start up a Bloodsword playthrough again, possibly even using these Oathsworn portraits here, or maybe some other ones. I'll have to see what I can find that looks nice and heroic. Then again, Bloodsword, it's low medieval fantasy. It's not... Well, no, it is low fantasy and it isn't. The World of Legend is low fantasy. The Bloodsword series is a little rather more high fantasy. than the rest of the world of legend in which the Bloodsword series is set. So, but the characters should look more medieval and less dragon punk young Americans trying to look hard circa 2001. If you played 3rd edition, you know what I'm talking about. So, I'm going to leave this episode here. Thank you very much for watching. I'll probably record something else after a little bit of a break tonight. But for now, I've done my little experiment and I'm happy with it. Right. Bye-bye, everybody. See you all next time.